Hello, everybody. It's me, Keisha, and today I want to take a few minutes to talk about birth control, wives, biblical wives, and birth control, and how we are to approach it, and what we should be thinking about it. But I think it's important first, before we dive in, to define my terms, right? So, what am I talking about when I am bringing up birth control? I am talking about the methods in which a husband and wife will use to prevent pregnancy, right? So, this is a decision that should be entered in, an intimate decision between husbands and wives. You guys are the ones in consultation to the Lord, praying and seeking His wisdom about your family, and what you all can and cannot bear in terms of growing your family. This does fall right into a decision that is squarely upon the shoulders of the husband and wife. Okay. Um, but what does the Bible say about children, right? Because we know that children are a blessing. In the Old Testament times, uh, if you didn't have a child, it was said to have been a result of God not blessing or opening the womb. And so we know that children are a blessing. And I have many dear sisters and brothers in the Lord who have been unable to conceive for one reason or the other. And it's very painful when you cannot, or you have lost a baby. My husband and I have had miscarriages. Um, those are very difficult walks and journeys to have, right? But nevertheless, the Lord is gracious and kind, and He gives us the strength to endure even those difficult times in life, right? We are not promised a trouble free life. In this life, we will have trouble, right? And so, birth control is something that husbands and wives have to discuss and make up their minds about, right? We know that children are a heritage. The fruit of the womb is a reward, they are gifts, right? But God gives us input and insight into what we deem fit. I would say that, to be open to being pushed beyond your boundaries sometimes, right? So, um, but nevertheless, this is not a law or a compulsion. We should seek godly counsel, wisdom, do some research, and husband and wives, preferably before you even get married, should have an understanding of um, how many, or you know, number the bracket we might be in, you know. But this podcast is for the married woman, right? Or the woman who is preparing to get married, who's looking for some input and insight on the topic of birth control, and what the Bible, or what biblically we should be considering as we dive into that particular subject, um, for our futures, right? Because childbearing is a long time. You start in your, some girls start preteen, 11, 10, and all the way up to 54. That's a long time, to consider. And you're not married all that time, of course, but let's say a woman gets married in her 20s, you have all the way to 50, mid 50s, some women, before that is not a topic or an issue anymore, right? And so it's good for us to be educated about what we are talking about, and defining our terms. So, when I'm talking about birth control, let me tell you what I'm not talking about. I am not talking about abortion. Abortion is murder, right? According to the Bible. We are not talking about that. That's not an option for um, sisters and brothers in a body of Christ, right? We life is sanctified. It's set apart. It's a gift, and we are not the givers of that gift, right? And we are all image bearers of the living God. right? And so we are not, I'm not talking about birth control. That I'm not talking about abortion. Abortion is not birth control. Abortion is murder, right? So conception um, is something that occurs when the egg and sperm meet, right? And so we believe that life begins at conception. So another thing I'm not talking about the morning after pill or emergency contraceptive. That is the chemicals that is given to a woman if she suspects she's pregnant within 24, 48, or whatever hours. She takes this morning after pill to make her body reject that baby, that embryo on the inside of her. And so we're not talking about that. That's not birth control. That's another form of murder, right? That's early murder. And so I'm not talking about that either. When I'm talking about birth control, I am talking about the methods of family planning, right? There are a lot of women that I know and I've met over the years that are really good at the family planning method of counting the days from ovulation, the safe zone of you know when to or when not to get pregnant. There are many apps out there now that will work with your unique cycle as a woman, to help you to navigate that particular information. When am I most fertile? Is this, and if we're trying to conceive, that's information you want to know. If you're not trying to conceive, that's information you want to know, right? And so there are many apps out there that can help and assist in that area. So they used to call it the rhythm method. It was counting, you did a lot of counting, and now there's some components that goes with taking your temperature and also looking at the consistency of things when you go to the restroom as well. And so the family planning method is, I guess, by far the safest method out there. Um, I don't want to say it didn't work for me or my husband and I, because we have all of our children, and we are blessed by them. It's just, if I feel, it's just my opinion, that you have to have a certain tenacity and personality to be able to be disciplined enough, and that didn't work for my husband and I. I'm disciplined, no. Anyway, but there are some families out there, some husbands and wives, this will work fantastic for, right? You will able to, the schedule, the calendar is set up to be able to assist, and that's great. There are some couples out there that are content to have as many children as the Lord blesses them. God bless them. I mean, that was my heart at one time before my life shifted from being homeschool, stay-at-home mom the first time, and then I went through divorce, and so my life drastically changed, and all of the ideals and the dreams that I had, a lot of them changed because my life changed, and that's just I have it is what it is, okay? But there's some families out there, awesome, that, hey, we're going to have as many as the Lord blesses us with. And I think that is great. That is where their contentment is. That's where their peace is. And so that's where, and I support them. I think that's wonderful, but that's not for everybody, right? Some people are not in a position, or don't, physically, the wife can't handle, um, the stress and the wear and tear on the body that pregnancy brings. It's just a reality. Your body changes drastically. Now, it's not a stress and a wear and tear that you're not able to withstand. I believe the Lord sustains us through pregnancy, and He designed us to get pregnant and to give birth, and but your physical body and what you're able to do, and your husband and you, once again, are the best deciders as to what that looks like for your family. Okay. So another method is the barrier methods. Now, everybody pretty much grew up with the barrier methods, right? Those are your your condoms and your diaphragms and your cervical caps and those things that prevent his swimmers from meeting your one girl, your egg up there, right? And so they are, we they've been around for a long time, right? And that might be a possibility of for birth control for you and your husband. That is something once again for you guys to discuss. Um, if you're trying to prevent pregnancy or maybe prevent for a season, maybe you intend to have a quiver full of children, right? But maybe you want to space them out. You want to have them 2 or 3 years apart or 18 months apart or whatever it is. The barrier method might be something you are using now or you're considering to use, right? And so those are safe methods. As long as you are, they're not causing irritation, and I know that sometimes that can be an issue. I know that sometimes, excuse me, discipline can be an issue in that area as well, right? It's like, oh wait, let me do this, let me put this on. I've tried the diaphragm and the cervical cap, and yeah, discipline is not our cup of tea over here. So yeah, but hey, it may work for you and your husband and your situation. And I think that is awesome. If that's something that you and your husband decide, a direction you decide to go in. It's economical. You can buy it at the store usually, unless it's a diaphragm. A cervical cap, as I understand it, and I know for sure that you have to go into your gynecologist and be measured and all of that. And it does take some planning, right? You have to think about the fact that I need to go and get this weight. Let me go, get that. So it ain't work. Sometimes it doesn't work for everybody, but everybody's different. So and then your life changes, when you get more children and everything. Discipline also can be hindered because now you're fitting the intimate time in, right? And so you want to, in my mind, I want to have what's effective and what's easy. That's just, what my husband and I have settled on. It has to be effective and easy use, right? And comfortability for everybody, right? Okay, so another method is of course, the spermicide methods, right? Those are, I'm not a great fan. They can be very irritating to the woman. Non-oxynol 9 is a chemical which is kind of like a detergent that's in the spermicides, the gels and the creams that are out there for insertion. And so just be aware of that. You probably, I'm sure I had a broad audience out there, but just being sure that you do your research and knowing that sometimes these things can cause irritation. And then, you're not going to want to use something that's going to irritate you and then, disrupt, comfortability and cause, vaginal yeast infection and so on and so forth. Now, that's not for everybody. So that's why you have to do your own research and find out what would work for your personal body and what will work for you and your husband together as a couple. Okay. So that's another area to look into. And so there's also a group of birth control called IUDs, intrauterine devices, IUDs. Let me tell you a quick story about my experience with IUD. So with the IUD, I had in my first marriage 3 little boys, and the last two from that first set, I had midwives to assist me because my first experience with my OBGYN with my firstborn was pretty traumatic in terms of the calls that he made and how arrogant he was. And I knew early on I was not going to use, OBGYN for any other pregnancy I had because they were, it was his show. And I'm not going to speak for all doctors, but it was all about his convenience and, so on and so forth. So anyway, I had midwives, and the midwives were wonderful with both of those pregnancies. I love their optimism and the fact that they viewed themselves as my assistant. They wanted to assist me in giving birth, and that was just awesome. Well, afterwards, I had three children, and they were all 15 months apart when I got pregnant. So 15 months pregnant again. So they ended up being 22 months apart. Um, and I was excited. I wanted to have, I was planning on just having another baby, and another baby, and another baby. And I remember having a conversation with my dad about that. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have a baby every other year. And I'm so excited about this. And, my dad was like, what? Are you nuts? And so that, he just had an entirely different mindset about children. And they were, and my dad loved us. We had some issues, a lot of issues, some tough issues. However, the children he loved, right? But children were viewed a lot different. Children were burdensome. That just as they suck finances, they suck time, and so on and so forth. And so my dad did not view it as much, and consequently, my first husband at the time, I don't know what happened in the later part of his life, but it was very difficult for him to, view children as that. I was a stay-at-home mom. We were young, so I can imagine some of the things that I just didn't know about. I didn't understand, and we didn't communicate. I had my thinking, he had his thinking, and we were young, and we had no input or guidance from any other mature couples in that to that degree, right? And so one day my midwife came in after I had had my third son, and she says, I think your body needs a break. I'm going to I think let's look at you getting a tubal ligation. Well, that was out. There was no way. I had heard horror stories about them, and I didn't want to do anything permanent, right? And so she suggested an IUD. And she said, you can take it out anytime, and, and it'll be easy. It'll give your body a break. Now, this was not the direction I wanted to go in. However, she made a pretty good case for giving my body a rest and giving me an opportunity to get my motherly bearings straight with three little boys, all under the age of 4, I think. And so I was like, okay, I'll do it, And so she did place it in. 10 years, fast forward 10 years, because after that series of things, and then 4 years after that, 4 or 5 years after, I end up being a divorced single woman, and I still had the IUD. And I was just like, okay, I got this. It was, it was in the back of my mind. It was no big deal. Well, I end up remarrying, and um, and I go to a health food store of all places, and I'm talking, and I'm telling her about some symptoms that I'm having, and I'm looking for supplements. I've always been on the natural side. And she says, well, that sounds like a copper issue. Why would you have a copper? I don't know. That sounds like you have too much copper in your system, in your bloodstream. And I was thinking, I said, well, I do have a copper T IUD. And there was happened to be another lady standing next to me, and she says, that causes abortions. And I remember the shopkeeper, the owner that I was talking to, kind of, you know, um, swept the conversation away and was like, "Oh, no, 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 don't worry about her," and quickly went to something else. But what she said stuck into my brain, and I was thinking, causes abortion. abortions. What is she talking about? And so I went home and started doing research. Now it's been, a long time. I was in my early 20s when I got that IUD, and now I'm in my, my mid 30s, and I hadn't even thought about them or anything. So I started doing research, and sure enough, I found out that this method of birth control was not exactly all that my midwife had told me when I had first gotten it, which was what I was told was that it would prevent the sperm, his guys, from getting to the egg because it changed the environment of my uterus. And so that was my story. That's what I was sticking to. Well, it turns out that's not exactly what it was doing all the time. Sometimes it would also cause a fertilized egg from implanting. Oh, my heart sunk. I was devastated by that news. I had no idea. And I felt terrible. Like, what? I had no idea. And so that's my caution for IUDs. The copper T ones and the ones that have the low progesterone and things of that, the hormonal ones as well. That and I'm finding that they're not going to say they don't cause. They're not abortifacients, right? So you got to do some really good digging if you want to find out the truth. But if you have one and you find yourself in a place that I am, that I was in, I would just have you to do your own research about that, because as believers of the living God, our Father, we do not want to do anything to contradict what He says about life, right? Um, he is the giver of life, and we don't want to go around destroying life, even, mindlessly. It's like I didn't know that, but now that I know, I'm responsible for it. Of course, so I changed my mind about what it was. I went home and talked to my husband, and we made a plan of action to have it removed. And that's a whole nother story for another day because I had it in for a long time. So anyway, I just want to caution you on, the IUD and sometimes the bill of goods that were sold about the IUD and how inaccurate the medical field, medical professionals can be sometimes, and they don't mean to. Sometimes they don't even read that information or have done proper research, right? And so you are responsible for doing the research. So I would, let you know, just to tell you to do your research, implore you to go and find out what it is that you have or what you're considering, right? I didn't know. And now I do. Of course, it's gone, but that was of great concern. I didn't want to do anything to grieve the Lord, and so I was like, okay. So anyway, which brings me to talking about the IUD brings me to the birth control pill. And listen, there's no way for me to talk about every pill that's out there. There's so many options as far as birth control pill goes. The birth control pill. Um, you know, I will say, as a practitioner and dealing with and having patients of mine, most of them sisters in the Lord, come in and having issues with fertility and understanding and knowing and tracing their history to know that they've been on birth control pills for, since they were teenagers to help with things like acne and mood swings and so on and so forth. Um, and now they're in their 30s and they can't conceive or they're having trouble conceiving. They have, fibroids and disruption in periods and heavy periods and cramping and PCOS, all sorts of things, and I'm not a fan of the birth control pill. I'm just not a fan of them. I think that they can be very much abortifacient. Um, because they don't always work the same way. Your bodies are very unique, and it finds a way to produce that egg. If they're telling you suppressing ovulation, I just do your research, read through those pamphlets, ask some questions, look online, ask the tough questions. Put in, is this, whatever that brand of birth control pill you're using or considering, put in, is this an abortifacient? Will this cause, abortions, early, really, really early, but chemical or whatever? Ask the question, to make sure so that you will know. And then on top of that, make sure you're not doing anything to disrupt the hormones that the Lord has given you, right? Putting 12 and 13-year-old girls on birth control pills to help with acne. There are so many other things that can be done naturally to help them with cramping and all of the early navigating of the menstrual cycle and things of that nature. But putting them on something chemical that will disrupt their natural bodies and their natural environment, and in the monthly cycle is, I would not go that direction for my daughter. And I have a daughter that's 12 years old, and that's not a direction. She's early on, and so we're navigating some things with that and helping her to learn, to pay attention to her body, and treating things herbally and with supplementation and things of that nature. But I would just caution moms from looking in that direction. I know the mainstream medical will, kind of try to get you on that direction, but I would caution you to stay away from it if at all possible. Find alternatives to things like acne. And sometimes we find that it's just a diet change, and drinking plenty of water and getting sunshine, vitamin D3 deficiency, magnesium, um, you know, just different supplements that the body's lacking because there's such an outsource once a month that there's not a time of replenishing, right? And so just looking into that for both the mother and the daughter, and for you adult women out there experiencing, painful periods, heavy bleeding, fibroids, and things of that nature, you know, um, if you have been going the Western mainstream method for all this time, I would just say, why don't you look into something alternative? Look at something that works with the body, not against it, right? And so, anyway, I digress. I'm talking about something totally different. But anyway, um, yes, birth control. That's what we're talking about. Okay. And so I would just, do your research and find out what works, what works for you and what isn't going to be against what God has placed in His Word about life. And we're not inadvertently causing our bodies to reject um, embryos, which are, babies in the beginning stages. We don't, that's not what we want to do as daughters of the Most High God and sons of the Most High God in our marriage covenant. We don't want to be, you know, throwing our babies away and not even thinking about it because it's something that somebody's told us works a certain way, and we find out in our research it actually does not, right? And so there are also, as I wrap up, there's another method of birth control that's come on the scene recently. And this is what my husband and I use. Um, one of the companies is called Smart Women's Choice, and it is not a barrier method. How can I describe it? So you place, it's a cream, and you place the cream um, in vaginally before, your husband enters, and it actually stops his guys. They or stop where they are, and they're not allowed to swim. They can't get through this stuff, right? And and the guys can't swim, can't get there, and so they're just there. So it doesn't, it doesn't disrupt anything hormonally. It's a great product, great company. They guarantee, if you use it the right way, they guarantee that you will not get pregnant if that is what you're trying to do, prevent pregnancy, right? And so I think that has been something that works for us. It's spontaneous, it's portable. The cream is portable. We can use it anytime, and it's just a criteria for our family that works. So I'm of course going to put a link to the company in the notes so that you guys can check it out. It's called Smart Women's Choice. There's another product on the market that you can get as well with a doctor's prescription, right? So for me, that was just like, I'm not going to the doctor to get this. So I, like that company. But if you have a good relationship with your doctor, you have a doctor you trust and certainly, she or he can get you a prescription for this other product that's on the market that works much in the same way as the one I'm telling you about, Smart Women's Choice. Listen, when I found that product, I was just so excited. I called the company and spoke with the doctor and researcher who created the product, and I had like a 45-minute conversation with her. She's a great woman. She had a lot of insight. Um, and she has a passion for women's health because she knows women who've been devastated by the chemical birth control pill and have had their bodies disrupted and their cycles disrupted by the birth control pill. And so she was a woman on a mission to find an alternative to that. Because they do, they increase your chances of breast cancer and ovarian cancer and all sorts of things. And so it's just important to find out how to work with the body and not against it. So anyway, that's my wisdom for today for those wives out there and those women who are preparing for marriage. Just start having a conversation with your fiance as you guys are talking about everything. Hopefully, you're in premarital counseling with a counselor that can point you to the truth of God's word. And for my married wives out there, married women out there, just, this, hopefully this has been helpful to you. I wish someone had told me about the IUD early on because I really, I was sad. I was sad that I didn't know, and I was sad that I was given information. I was sad that I didn't read, and I am a reader. I didn't get they didn't give me anything. Just put the IUD in and sent me on my way. Um, but I was sad that I didn't know what I found out 10 or 12 years, or however much time it was, 14 years, I think, 14 years down the road. I was just sad that I found out, later on. But better late than never, and it is what it is. Can't change the past, but I can give you information for your future and your present, And so, anyway, I pray that the Lord will use this, the wisdom and experience that He's allowed me to walk through in order to benefit you and edify you and help you. So, anyway, I love you with the love of the Lord, and I hope this has been helpful. I would like you guys to subscribe and pray for me. I am trying my hardest to navigate um, inserting podcasts into my life. It was so easy, and I don't know what happened. So, once you get out of a rhythm of something, so I don't know. Just pray that that the Lord would, if it's His will, would open doors for me to do these more often. And if it's not, that He would make that plain as well. Okay. So like, subscribe, and share this with a woman that might be having some questions, right? And then it'll help, and use it as a springboard to dive deeper into more scientific research about some of the things I spoke about. Okay. And thank you. Talk to you later. Bye.